Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 713 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's episode, we'll try that again. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Adam. He is an adult living with type 1 diabetes, and he likes to carry heavy things on his back. I think that about covers it. While you're listening today, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're an adult living with type 1 diabetes who is a U.S. resident or the caregiver of someone with type 1, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Join the registry, take the survey, help people living with type 1 diabetes, support the podcast. This entire effort should take you fewer than 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes to help a podcast that you like, people that you have a lot in common with, and you might find out some stuff for yourself. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Today's podcast is also sponsored by Touched by Type 1, and their big event is coming up on August 27th in Orlando, Florida. So check it out at touchedbytype1.org. And the podcast is also sponsored today by US Med. Get your diabetes supplies from US Med. All you have to do to get started is go to usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. When you do that, you'll be able to get your free benefits check and get going. usmed.com/juicebox.
My name's Adam. I'm a rucker, which is just interesting to say out loud to people for the first time when I meet them. But yeah. My name's Adam, and I live in Cleveland, and I like carrying heavy.
So it is not that you went to Rutgers University to get your degree?
No. So that's Rutgers. That has a T in it.
Yes. So this is Rucking. Basically, you like to walk places, but carry heavy stuff on your back while you're doing it.
That's correct, yeah. I mean, in the whole evolution of that whole hobby, sport, pastime, it's the same concept as jogging or going for a run. The difference is I think running sucks. So I want to get the same cardio workout without the added, oh my God, I've got to run because I don't want to run. Mm-hmm. So rucking it is where you strap on some heavy weight onto your back and you go for a walk, which is easy to do. And you can do it with a bunch of friends, which is what I typically do.
What is the word? Like, what's the etymology of the word?
Well, so think about military jargon. When they're humping a ruck, meaning they're carrying their ruck, it's got ammunition, rations, MREs, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they've got to go over distance to cover some ground to either infiltrate or exfiltrate from a situation. A lot of times you do it on foot. And, you know, the special forces are known for this type of thing, especially the Army Green Berets, because that's how they get there. They got to be as stealth as possible sometimes. Mm-hmm. So if you can carry everything on your back, get in, get out, that's what that is. And, you know, a lot of times those guys, to get to a place, you've got to go 20, 30 miles, get there, then go to work, and then get the hell out of there. So that's where it comes from, is just a military background, humping a ruck. In UK, that kind of stuff, rucking or carrying a ruck is what kids carry to school. They're just backpacks. United States, we call them backpacks, but over there they call them rucks, you know, German word.
Gotcha.
Rucksack, that kind of thing.
I only think of the actor Alan Ruck, who played Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when I hear the word. So.
Well, he's also a great ruck.
He's also.
I mean, in if you want to put that in context of rucking, what Alan Ruck would do is put a backpack on, then carry the Jaguar back instead of just running it backwards.
Do you think when Alan Ruck has sex, he calls it No.
Oh, he's definitely rucking for sure.
Yeah. He thinks he calls it rucking.
He probably does. He's probably got a style and everything. And yeah.
It's a terrible pickup line at a bar. Or is it? I
go
don't
to a
know.
family reunion. I'm going rucking. It's great.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? Would you like to go rucking? All right. So you're on the podcast because did I actually ask for people who have like interesting and odd hobbies at some point?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're looking for type 1 diabetics that have interesting hobbies. And so I sent you an email with a picture. I think it was a picture of my back carrying a ruck and an added weight of something. And I said, I kind of do this. You're like, let's do it. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. That counts for sure. I mean, it's just an intense workout that's sort of been turned into, do you do it? I guess my question is, like, do you have a bunch of friends that you get together with and do it? Or do you belong to a group that does it? Do you do it by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. So I got into it, trying to make like a lifestyle change. I needed to lose some weight. So I decided I was going to train to do the Murph because I saw John Krasinski post on his Instagram that he did it. I'm like, the dude from The Office did that. Why can't I do it? And at the time I was extremely heavy, really overweight. So I'm like, I'm going to train for that. So I started training for that, kind of honor a friend of mine's brother who'd passed away. So I was going to do that. And during that time of training for it, I was diagnosed as type 1 diabetic a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I can't do the Murph right now because I was so weak from being sugar so high, your muscle density goes, and I need to do something. So I'm like, I looked up other kind of crazy stuff, and I saw someone, post that they're doing a rucking event in Pittsburgh. So I'm like, I'm going to go do that. And it was just, the concept was get a ruck or a backpack, put weight in it, have the list of things we want you to bring, and we're going to, work you through some workouts, which I'm like, okay, that sounds like fun. And you got to train for that. So I just threw some weight in a backpack. At the time it was just like a laptop bag. And I just started walking around the block. And that was just by myself, just trying to figure out, I'm going to show up to this event and I got to kind of be ready for that. So I'm like, I just got to at least be able to put some miles on with weight on my back because my legs are weak. My back's weak. My arms are weak. So you started slow, worked your way up. And now I'm part of a whole community of people. Like every city kind of has like a rucking club, which is kind of fostered by a company called Ruck that kind of makes specialized equipment for these types of things. They're military style events where they're led by someone from the special forces, a special forces veteran. And they kind of build that bridge from a civilian who thought, I wonder what it was like to be in the military, but didn't want to actually go to the military. You can kind of get a taste of it. And what it is they're veterans, special forces veterans, kind of giving back some of their knowledge about pushing through, adversity. A lot of times that adversity is going to be just physical limitations, pain, things like that. So you just kind of learn how to push through it. And it kind of grows. You kind of dip your toe in the water and either you get all the way in or you get all the way out. And I happen to get all the way in.
Gotcha. Hey, so, all right, let's move like this then. How old are you now?
I'm 41.
All right. You cut out for a second, but 41 is the answer, right?
Yeah. Okay. 41. Yes.
Diagnosed how long ago?
I was 37 when I was diagnosed, 2018.
At that point, are you married? Do you have children? Are you single?
I've got married with 4 kids.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Jeez. Easy.
Yeah.
Adam.
No problem.
Yeah. Sounds like you're pretty good at rucking. You know what I mean?
Right. Just time away from the kids. It's great.
So, any other autoimmune in your life prior to that or since?
I mean, prior to that, at the time, vitiligo was not being called an autoimmune disease, but I've had that since I was a small child. Mm-hmm. Now it's kind of considered an autoimmune disease. Well, at least they figured out how it causes it more now. Yeah. So I guess that was my first autoimmune disease. And then type 1 diabetes, obviously. But then since I've developed Hashimoto's disease, which really threw a wrench in kind of this whole energy thing. So,
okay,
I'm still kind of getting under the umbrella of that right now.
We'll get to that. So you're
sure.
So at 37, you said you were you considered yourself overweight. Like, had you been your whole life?
I was 300 pounds.
Oh, wow. Were you like 9 feet
I was
tall?
big.
How tall are you? Yeah.
No, I'm about 6 foot.
Wow. Okay. That's
So
probably looks significant on you then.
yeah, it was pretty significant. I saw a picture of myself sitting next to my childhood best friend when I sold him a car, and I go, man, that's big.
Did you not know
that's
it?
kind of what's that?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit, so it confused me. But
Sure.
did you start out as a bigger person, or did you kind of? I was going to say grow into it, but did you? But did it happen over time?
If you looked at pictures of me through high school in my early 20s, I was a skinny, tall guy.
Okay.
And then, circumstances happen, mental health happens. Fell into a depression. The year 2012 was a pretty significant bad year for me. So it was like that year it kind of started growing and growing and growing. And then fast forward, 4 or 5 years later, you look down, go to the doctor for the first time in a few years. They're like, yeah, the first number on your weight's a 3. Right. That's wakes you up a little bit. And that's kind of what happened with me.
As it was happening, were you aware, unaware, unable to care? Like, what was your mindset?
I just didn't care. I was just in a severely dark, deep depression because I had lost a job, dealing with that. Money was tight. Me and my wife had, were newlyweds at that point with just one child, and the second one just was brought into the picture. Mm-hmm. So it was just one of those things where, personal life was in turmoil outside of my marriage. Then it was a crazy 2012. And then as I started kind of like getting my mojo back, I started a job that was significantly not good for the waistline, because you worked in office, you ate when you could, you ate as much crap as you could because that's the only thing you could find. So it was just a blossoming of circumstances that put you up there. And only thing I noticed was I kept having to buy bigger pants, but not a ton bigger. Like, this year I'm going to be wearing a one size bigger than I was last year. Mm-hmm. No big deal.
Okay. All right. So at some point, does your diabetes come before you're kind of awakening about your weight, or do you start working on your weight before you get diabetes? Adam, you're gone, aren't you?
Sorry. Are you there?
No. Hey, you were gone for a second. Are you back? Can you hear me? He does not hear me. If I hear you now. That's not the song. Ooh, but yeah, this is definitely where the ad's going to end up. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is a premixed autoinjector of glucagon for treatment of very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes ages 2 and above. Find out more. Go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. US Med is the place where I think you might want to get your diabetes supplies from. usmed.com/juicebox. Call 888-721-1514. Either way you want to do that is a great way to get your free benefits check from US Med. Here's what you're going to get from US Med. They are the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. The #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH. The #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide. They're where we got Arden's Omnipod 5 from. They're also the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys, and they've served over 1 million people living with diabetes since 1996. US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. US Med always provides 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. So if you're looking for a place to get your diabetes supplies, including the Libre 2 and the Dexcom G6, you're looking for US Med. 888-721-1514 or online at usmed.com/juicebox. Okay, what was my question? My question was, did you start thinking about weight loss prior to diabetes, or did diabetes happen prior to weight loss thinking?
So I started losing weight before diabetes because, like I said, I was 300 pounds, high blood pressure, the whole gamut. A lot of things were happening. So I knew I needed to lose weight. And my younger brother, also was kind of a bigger person. And he kind of hit a mark where he's like, I'm changing my whole life. And I kind of hit that point as well. And just started, finding ways to work out. It was first passively just changing up diet a little bit.
Yeah, Adam, hey, you're noisy.
Oh, sorry, man.
No, don't be sorry. We're going to move your phone somewhere else.
No, hold on. I'm moving myself back down in my closet downstairs in my office. I thought it was just a Wi-Fi issue, so I went up next to my Wi-Fi. How's that?
I don't know. When you're talking, I'm getting a tapping behind your voice. It's electronic tapping, so I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
if you got
probably
too close to something else, maybe.
Yeah, probably. How's it now?
To wait till it gets settled. Try it again.
How's it now?
It's still there. Damn.
Jeez.
Let me think. So many people use their iPhone so successfully for this. Oh, it's not like intrinsically that as a problem is what I mean. So, I don't know. It was a new noise. I didn't hear it before.
Oh, sorry, man. I think I walked up closer to my router for Wi-Fi signal, just in case that was the issue, but it's all good.
Okay. Now you are somewhere pretty hollow. You're going to kill me in a second. So did you move?
See, I'm an audio guy too, so it's going to drive me nuts too.
Did you move into a room where there's no carpeting or something like that?
All right, there you go. I just took off my Bluetooth that was echoing in my ears too.
Okay, perfect.
And turned off my speakerphone.
All right, here we go. Let's try again. Stand perfectly still, Adam, and do this podcast. I'm sorry. I know I interrupted you. You were in the middle of explaining how you started getting on top of things.
Yeah, I mean, so the whole process of losing weight for me started with just changing up what I was eating. Just volume of calories was going down, and I was losing a significant amount of weight. I went from 300 pounds to 250, I would say, in 6 months.
Wow.
Give or take. Just kind of changing that up. I worked at a job where I was moving around a lot. Like I would go, I worked at a car lot. So I was walking miles a day, just moving cars around, things like that. Mm-hmm. So it was easy because the physical activity was there, but it was mostly like just passively knowing I needed to eat better, just pay attention to it.
Yeah. Give me
that's what started.
Give me an example of a meal before and a meal after.
Sure. So a meal before, didn't care. I would go to Wendy's, for instance, for lunch at work. I would get a Baconator with a supersized biggest fry they had and a Coke. And that was my lunch.
Every day.
That's a significant amount of days. Yes. Okay. Not necessarily every day, but more days than not. And then after, it was, I would still go out to eat because it's hard to bring your lunch to work when you're not sure when you eat, but I would physically leave the building for lunch, go somewhere where I could eat on my own time. Mm-hmm. And there was a new, like a farmer's market down the street that opened up that had a great salad bar. So I just went over there and ate salads for lunch.
And you didn't have any difficulty making the adjustment?
No, that's what's really weird for me is when I decide to do something, I don't dabble. I just do it. Like, oh, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm doing now. Okay. Cool. And just make it a new habit. They say 21 days, create a new habit. I try and do that in like 10.
So is it fair to say that prior to all this, when you hit your dark spot, that you almost were like diving into eating poorly, even though you probably weren't thinking about it that way? So you were kind of all in on that as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You don't leave like Wendy's on Wednesday and then grab a salad and go for a jog on Thursday. It's like one or the other. For sure. Yeah. And that's definitely the case. Okay. All right. That makes sense. So you knock off 50 pounds pretty quickly, which is stunning. Does your wife mention it either way?
Well, she would get really angry because my wife, at this point has given birth to kids, and the kids were not kind on her body. So she's been trying to in weight. She developed a thyroid condition after the first one. So she's been trying to lose weight. She's having some difficulty. And she sees me just like, no problem. I decided to do it today and no worries.
Yeah.
I just started doing it. And that it probably frustrated her a little bit.
Yeah.
Because she said that out loud.
What thyroid condition did she get after the birth?
She's got hypothyroid.
Yeah.
So she's having, synthroid and all that stuff. And, and that plays with whole other issues, iodine imbalances and vitamin stuff. And she was just trying to get a grip on that.
Yeah, it's difficult.
She was having some difficulty. She seems to be evening out a bit now, but still having trouble with the whole weight loss thing. And that kind of goes along with it too.
Yeah. No, I hear that. Okay. So things are going your way. You're losing weight. Yeah. You've had a couple of kids. You're kind of pulling out of your darkness, and then diabetes.
Yeah. Well, I had gone in because I had started seeing an endocrinologist for low testosterone. That was what my PCP identified as something that was a problem.
Okay.
So I started seeing an endocrinologist as I started losing weight. I told her, hey, this is my plan. So we can kind of do some tests. She wanted to figure out, why did I have such low testosterone besides the weight? Was there a physical problem? CAT scans, MRIs, the whole 9 yards of the brain. And she's like, well, let's get together in February. And this is February of 2018. She goes, let's get together just for a checkup, and we'll kind of take a look at everything and see how it's going. And so, 6 months goes by from that last appointment with her to my following appointment. And during that time, I started developing an insatiable thirst. Like, I was drinking a lot of water, but now I'm drinking 10x that amount, right? I was maybe drinking 2 or 3 bottles of water at work because we give out bottles to our customers, to drinking like 10 a day, like just a lot. And my PCP had changed my blood pressure meds to include hydrochlorothiazide. And he goes, this is going to make you pee a little bit more. I'm like, okay. Well, I started taking it. I started peeing more, and then it got more, and it got more. And I started getting dehydrated. And then I started waking up in the middle of the night, having to pee so bad, but not being able to walk because your legs are so dehydrated. So I'm crawling to the bathroom. And this went on for months before I went and saw the endo again to follow up on my testosterone stuff. And she's like, we're going to start testosterone because you're really low. She goes, is anything else going on? I said, yeah, I think my blood pressure meds are a little out of whack because I lost 70 pounds now. And she's like, yeah, you've lost a considerable amount of weight. Good job. And, I said, yeah, but this is kind of happening to me now. She goes, oh, tell me more. And I just started telling her how often I was getting up to pee, how much water I was drinking. And she's like, there's something going on. We don't know what, but there's something going on.
Yeah.
So she goes, I'm going to order all this blood work, go get it done. Well, the following week I had my annual with my PCP with also had blood work. So I decided I'm going to let it wait a couple of weeks and go do it all at once. So yeah. And I went and did blood work. They did like 12, 13 vials because they had all of my annual stuff, then a full panel for her. And then the next day, my chart starts going off about all the blood tests. I'm like completely failing from, blood glucose to A1Cs to everything's just blown out of whack. And, they endo calls you and says, you have an appointment today at 1:00. I go, no, my PCP appointment's at 7 tonight. She goes, oh, this is the endocrinology office. You have an appointment with us today at 1:00.
Yeah.
I just can't leave work. She goes, will your employer not let you? I go, yeah, I work in the car dealership. I got to work. They go, do we need to call you an ambulance? I go, oh, it's serious. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, an ambulance will get me out of here. Yes.
So, I just went to my boss and said, hey, I got these blood tests. They got to go. I don't know what any of this means, but I'll be back, I think, later. And he's like, whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
So I went, they sat you down. They go, well, you're definitely diabetic. So they do the whole, here's how to take your blood sugar. Here's insulin. Here's a ticket to go down to the blood work to see what type you are. Cause we don't know, so that's when they figure out, oh, you're a type 1. That was the next day. So
I have a question that might seem weird after all that, but did you end up getting the testosterone replacement ever?
No. So once I got my A1Cs in check and got my blood sugar in control, everything evened out. Everything. My thyroid levels evened out. My testosterone evened out. My lipids evened out. Like everything was fine once they figured that out.
It
was weird. Yeah.
How long after the diagnosis did you get Hashimoto's?
So that was this past winter, like March of 2020 is when I went in for my annual. They go, "What's going on?" She goes, "You're kind of gaining weight pretty quick again. Is there anything going on?" I'm like, "Well, I work in healthcare in the middle of a pandemic where I sell the number one treatment for COVID. So I'm a little stressed out. It's a little depressing working with old people who are literally passing away. So I'm probably in a little bit of a depression. So that always makes, me gain weight." She goes, "Yeah, but that's not going to account for all of it. So let's take a look." And I gave her some other symptoms, just lethargy in general. Yeah. So she looked it up and my antibodies were through the roof. And she's like, "You clearly have Hashimoto's. This is no ifs, ands, or buts about it." So
I have a question.
Synthroid. Yeah.
Okay. Back in the first time when you hit a kind of dark place, can you look back before that and see any Hashimoto's type symptoms back then?
Yeah. I mean, probably a little bit. If I go back and look at my blood test, my thyroid levels were always on the higher side of normal in general. Hypothyroid disease runs in my family generations, for as long as they could. My grandmother had it, my mom's got it, I've got it. And then my dad's side, probably the same. I don't know much about my dad's family medical history, but I'm sure we've got one or two people that had that same issue there too.
Yeah, because it really made me wonder as you started kind of building the story, if the first time this happened to you wasn't maybe a thyroid issue as well, and then perhaps it quieted down a little bit for a while. Which I know is not a super technical term, but I always wonder when you see people have wild swings in their I don't know, just their personalities, energy, weight, stuff like that. If it isn't an imbalance, maybe an internal imbalance, and not just because we tend to think of it as like, I don't know how we think of it. You see somebody who just starts acting differently, and you're like, oh, he's having a bad day or a bad month or something's going on at work. But there are delicate balances inside of your body, and when they move around, stuff goes wrong.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of the times, like I've always found my health issues in times of personal crisis, right? Because the symptoms that I'm matching for physical symptoms like lethargy, that kind of thing, was always masked by, oh, I'm also in a really dark place otherwise. So is this depression or is this a physical problem? And having grown up with a mom in healthcare, you only went to the doctors if you were dying, right? You got a bone stick. Like I got hit in the head with a baseball bat, cracked my head wide open, and the neighbors called the ambulance. My mom's like, "Why would you call the ambulance? Just drive him to the hospital." But they didn't. She wasn't there. But and then we wait. That kind of thing. So it's all of these things. Your symptoms can be masked by external factors.
Yeah.
So a lot of times this could have gone unchecked for a lot longer. Had I not been in a bad mental place, I probably would have picked up on these a little faster.
Right. And stressful moments can also throw things into motion.
Oh, that's for sure too.
I think Hashimoto's is a good example of that. And so is type 1, to be perfectly honest. You get into a bad spot and you start taxing your body, stress and things that are on the verge of just holding together sometimes just kind of can't anymore.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely some truth to that.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely has to be some truth to it.
So, how did you find having diabetes, Adam? Was it? I asked that question like you bought a new sofa, and I was like, "How did you find the new suede sofa? Did you enjoy it in the house?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, it threw me through the gamut because now I'm like, "What does this mean?" I've had a good close friend of ours has been type 1 diabetic for a long time, so I've been exposed to it. I was there during a pretty horrific hypo that he was having where we had to call an ambulance. So I've seen the dark sides and I've seen the good sides, right? My cousin's been living with it since he was 2 months old. So I've been exposed to it, but I've never paid much attention to it. A few years ago, someone that grew up with my mom, her son passed away from type 1 diabetes. So it was a big, I get it. I'm exposed. I see it's out there. Now it affects me. So now I'm like hyper focused on, okay, what do I do? So I took it upon myself to start learning about what it is. Before I went to my diabetes education, I was given some pretty conservative treatment plans to start because I lived my whole life without it. So they didn't want to throw me in deep so I would get so overwhelmed. So they kind of eased me into, this is Lantus, this is how it works. This is Humalog, this is how it works. If your sugar is here, give you this. And they kind of walked you through that first meeting. So I decided to look up, okay, what does this mean? And I gamified everything. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get my blood sugars down. This is going to be the thing. And I just focused on it. It gave me something to focus on.
Yeah.
It gave me a little bit more of a better purpose, because when you're reading about the side effects of having type 1 diabetes, neuropathy, that kind of thing, scares the crap out of you. Yeah. It really does. And I didn't want anything of those things to happen. I've got friends with neuropathy, don't want to deal with it, don't want to have it. So yeah, I just want to dive into it and learn as much as I could.
Okay. Just a real quick question. Cousin on whose side, your mom's or your dad's?
Mom's.
Okay. So that cousin had type 1 for quite some time in your lifetime?
Almost dead. He was born, and then all of a sudden he was in hospital in diabetic coma. Like, it was a pretty big, serious thing. So he was a baby when he was diagnosed.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. How did you start off with technology? 4 years ago, did you have a CGM pretty quickly, a pump? How did you do it?
So my insurance was kind of a pain in the butt when it came to that. I had a one touch right out of the doctor's office and some quick pens. Mm-hmm. Within 6 months of me pricking my finger, I'm like, I need to get a Dexcom. But my first A1C back after being, diagnosed as diabetic was like 6.1. And for whatever threshold my insurance needed to get me one, I was below that. So my doctor was instrumental of doing all the appeals to get it all approved. Mm-hmm. And within 8 to 10 months, I was on CGM.
Okay.
Which was awesome. And I denied the pump at that point, because for me, my problem with weight was I was eating a lot. If I made it easier to eat, I would eat whatever I want and I would get big again. That was my fear.
Okay. So you thought if you had a pump, you'd be like, snacking will be easier and that won't be good for me. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I knew that would be easier because I've got friends on pumps. I'd listen to the podcast at this point.
Yeah.
And life gets easier with a pump. I'm like, I need to make it still a little difficult for myself. And it was a Rucking event that changed my whole opinion on that. But that's another, we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get that. I just want to ask one kind of follow-up question around that.
Sure.
So do you consider a side of diabetes, like, I don't know how to talk about stuff like this, but like,
sure.
Do you have an eating disorder?
I mean, maybe. I'm talking with a nutritionist now about some of my things with food. And I grew up in a time in the 80s where my mom probably either anorexia or bulimia or both, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I've watched her deal with these yo-yo diets. And I'm like, I'm not going to deal with that. And so there's probably a little bit of that going on, some body dysmorphia things. Because even when I lost 100 pounds at this point, from deciding to lose weight to I'm a type 1 diabetic, I've lost 100 pounds. And I'm like, I still feel like I'm 300 pounds. I still feel big. So there's probably a little bit of that going on for sure.
Yeah. Cause 6 feet, 200 pounds. I mean, if it's on you right, you're a bigger person at that point, but it's not big in a crazy way.
No, not at all. And now the whole option now, from back then it was losing weight so I'd look better, right? Mm-hmm. If I look better, I think I'd feel better. And now it's more or less, I don't care what I look like. I just want to be really strong. Okay. Like, I want to be really strong.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm trying to imagine the first time you ruck anything. So how much weight do you start with?
So it's easy to start with any weight. We'll start with 5 pounds if you need to. I started with 20.
Okay.
Because all the sites that I was going to about this kind of stuff was training plans are start with 20. It's pretty easy. You can handle 20 pounds on your back with no problem. And then I weighed my daughter's book bag and it was like 25. I'm like, yeah, no problem. 20 is good.
Your daughter's book bag for school was 25 pounds?
Yeah, with all the books she had to carry home for studying and that kind of stuff.
I hear you.
So I just threw some bricks in a bag and put it on my back and started walking.
Some bricks in a bag you put on your back and went for a walk. How far do you walk?
Yeah. First time, 3 miles.
Any time considerations? Or you're just trying to do the distance?
Just doing the distance. I had a route, and I turned, when I went out of my house, I turned right, and I had a big square in the neighborhood. And so I just come back the square, and, at one point the distance home and the distance out, to and from is the same. So I just go to a point, turn around, come back.
Yeah.
It was fine.
How long do you think it takes you to feel stronger after you start doing it?
You feel stronger immediately, not because you're probably growing muscle that fast, is because, wow, I thought that would be really hard, and I kind of did that no problem. So then you start playing challenges. I wonder if I can do it faster. I wonder if I can do it heavier. And you kind of like push yourself and play that game in your head over and over. And significant muscle is not going to be built overnight, but you feel after the first week, if you make a plan of it, you feel stronger by the end of the week. It's great.
Wow. Well, I mean, I guess really, in a modern society, you've described a number of your jobs. They weren't like physically demanding jobs. And you got to think, a number of years ago, most of our jobs were more physically demanding. So you're really just
100%.
Yeah, you're creating that in your leisure time, basically, because your work time is easier.
Yeah. And you could do it with the kids. You want to walk instead of riding your bikes to the park, let's walk. And so they'll walk or ride their scooter, and I'm going to put on a ruck and I'm going to walk behind them.
Right.
And the job is try and keep up, because A, you're going to get a cardio workout, and 2, that's just going to push you along. They're going to be you're spending time with your kids. What's better than that?
Well, I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's a couple of things.
There's a lot of things better than that, but
I don't know if it's better. It's just different in a fun way.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing about it, like when I was working the jobs, I was working a lot of hours. Mm-hmm. And so this gave me time to spend time, work out, do all those things I made time for, but also involve them as well. So I think modeling good behavior to them is just important as disciplining them for doing something bad.
Did the strength sort of create itself body wide, or was it more like core and back and legs?
I started noticing significant changes just in my legs, because the first time I rocked, it felt like my knees were going to snap, because you're like, wow, you put a lot of weight, you're not used to it. Mm-hmm. So you feel it in your knees first. And that first thing it does is build some knee strength, because you're not running, you're just walking a natural gait, but because it's heavier, you're working those muscles first. And then your core starts tightening up, because to hold that up, you've kind of lean into it. So you're tightening your core and you're walking through it. So that becomes better, because my core is stronger. My back problems I've had for years have kind of disappeared. Yeah. Because my core is a lot stronger.
That makes sense. How long until you up the weight?
Well, I stuck around 20 pounds for a good bit, probably 6 months. And then I did my first rucking event, where it was 20 pounds minimum, then 3 liters of water on top of that. So even right there, you're looking at 30 pounds ish.
Okay.
So that was 6 months into it. And now, when I feel like I've kind of like done my 3K route or 5K route, and I've beaten my time over and over again, I know it's time to add more weight to kind of push through that.
I see. You drink a lot of that water on the walk?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
More than most.
Because you just like to stay hydrated, or?
I like to stay hydrated. Dexcom works better when you're hydrated.
Gotcha.
But also, when I get like dry mouth, it reminds me of when I was uncontrolled diabetic, and that dryness in the back of your mouth, that was like a trigger for me. Like, I can't ever let that happen again, because it's so bad. Because if I'm that dehydrated, it means, my legs are going to hurt and all this stuff. So I like to stay really hydrated that way.
That makes sense. I don't eat at the restaurant that I ate at right before my appendix burst, and the two things had nothing to do with each other. So
right.
I just don't want that.
Right.
I don't even want the feeling anymore.
Right.
Okay. So how do you manage your insulin for all this walking?
So I was just a Lantus Humalog MDI. Because when I first started, I didn't have zero visibility over my blood sugars. So my first event, I did it as a finger prick MDI situation, but it wasn't a big taxing event. It was something called a light event. It was 6 hours long. You cover 2 or 3 miles. So if it's 6 hours long and I'm covering 2 or 3 miles, I know I'm not going to have this long distance, my blood sugar is going to drop thing because I'm not walking long or hard enough, right? Sure, there's going to be a little bit more working out than I normally do, but I wasn't too worried about it. And then I started upping the ante in just some of the event space. And I realized that MDI and pricking my finger in a 12-hour event is just impractical. It's just not practical to do that. You need to have a bit more technology. And that's when I'm like, okay, need to get a CGM. So just so I get visibility over that.
I got to ask you, a 12-hour event. What do you walk into Minnesota? What are you doing?
So they have this company, Ruck, has 3 levels. Well, I have more than 3, but the 3 basic core events that they offer are a Ruck Heavy, a Ruck Tough, and a Ruck Light. And the biggest duration is activity and time. So a light is going to be your entry level type event, 6 hours long ish, sometimes 4, sometimes 6, distance between 2 to 5 miles, lighter weight. It's like if someone is just trying to get into it, they don't want to scare you away. And then once you get into it and you get the bug, you go, I want to do more. So now you do a tough event, which is the same thing as the light, except it's a little heavier. It's a bit longer, and their standards are a little tighter. So, hey, you have so long as an entire team, because the people you show up to these events with, you create one team, and that's kind of a team building exercise. So you've got to move all this stuff, whether it's sandbags, random you find along the way, like a tree trunk. You got to get it from point A to point B in a certain time. By the way, you're not allowed to look at a watch, so hurry it up. So you kind of do that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of fun to do that because you're working with people, switching weight back and forth, and that's just fun to do. So that's a 12-hour. And then the heavy is just that. It's just longer and heavier, which is a 24-hour rock fest. Jeez. It's awful.
Do you eat during it?
Well, as a diabetic, because you tell them you're a diabetic, if you're smart, they don't take your food away from you because food is now life-saving to you. Everybody else that has functioning pancreases, they'll limit your food. You take what you're going to eat with you. So in some events, they take your food away and tell you when you can eat. But usually between waypoints, you get from point A to point B, you'll have a chance to stop, reset yourself, eat something if you need it, and then keep going.
Okay.
But it's all endurance. It's all about endurance.
Does it cost money to be involved?
Yeah. Yeah. These events aren't cheap. They can be pretty expensive, but the reward is worth, in my opinion, worth the cost.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, you're paying somebody to carry sand for no real reason. Sounds very attractive. I get what it's about, but it's a funny idea.
Yeah. Oh, it's a really, really funny idea. And I don't really care about carrying the weight. I mean, that's the suck fest part of it, but it's between those movements where you get to talk to the guy running it, who one of my favorite cadres name's Cadre Igor. And he was in Delta Force during the Battle of Mogadishu, and listening him tell that story or tell you what it was like is just worth all the pain you go through. So you can hear that story in a way where now he put you through a movement that they had to do and you kind of understand it better. That's what it's about.
Do you prep at all for these things? I mean, do you cut your basal back how far before you get to the event? Do you eat certain things prior to it? Do you not eat certain things prior to it?
Yeah. Well, I didn't find your podcast until after I was medically dropped from a 24-hour event because of low blood sugar. And at that point, I didn't cut basal because I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that concept. I was just told I got to give myself this. So, and I didn't have CGM when I started it. So it was that failure in that 24-hour event. I was 9 hours into the event and I was dropped because my blood sugar was low enough where I was completely coherent, but my blood sugar wouldn't read on the one touch at all. So one of the guys in the stack with us was an ER doc. And I'm sitting there, tears running down my face because I've trained, 6 months to a year to be there. And I'm 9 hours in. And I was going to do what the heavy, tough, light. I was going to do the heavy, followed by the tough, followed by the light, all in a row. That's what I was training for. And, 9 hours into the first event, I'm getting dropped because I can't manage my blood sugar. And at this point I've had 3 lows already. So like, yeah, you're out, man. Like, damn it.
It's just going to keep happening. So these rucking events are the reason you found the podcast?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I need to find a better way I was looking for information, better ways to manage, because what I was doing wasn't working for what I wanted to do at all. So I needed to find different ways to do it. So I just looked up, I had commutes to work that were about 20 minutes. So I love podcasts. So I just started looking for type 1 podcasts, and yours was like the first one to pop up. I'm like, okay. And then I just started listening. And then when you would reference an older episode about something, I'd go back and listen to the older episode. No kidding. It all came down to get a CGM and ultimately get a pump, because that's how you do it. So that's what I did.
Do you find that in the end it's timing and amount?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Timing, amount, and also confidence that you know what you're doing.
Right.
A lot of it is just lack of confidence, knowing, is it going to work the right way? Is it not going to work the right way? Yeah. You know, and that fear of insulin is a real thing, right?
Oh, of course.
Especially when you're working out.
No, of course. And the chasing becomes, you don't realize you're chasing at first, and then you don't realize how far you've run away from the path, and you can't find your way back anymore. You know, you just, it's days and days of you like stopping lows and then eating and making it high again, and then, you know, crashing. Yep. And you're just like, I don't understand. Like, cause you can't, it's such an overused idea, but you can't see the forest for the trees at some point. You just,
no,
you can't, you
don't know how bad the fight is until you're not in it anymore. And you can look back and like kind of debrief what you did well and what you didn't.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Sorry. Arden's bothering me.
No, that's all good.
No, I just had to text her and let her know what I was doing. Where are you is code for I'm hungry. You should come make me lunch. I'm pretty sure.
That's exactly what my kids do, except they come downstairs with a bag of bread and go make me a sandwich.
At least they have an idea. Arden is like, I don't know what I want, but I'm hungry. And then you stand there listing all the things you have in the house, and she goes, there's nothing here. Like, well, there must be. It cost me $300. I don't see how there can't be anything here.
Right.
Well, I want to go get a cheeseburger. Okay.
Sounds great.
What if I made you a cheeseburger? Nah, not the same. Okay. You can't win.
No.
Yeah. It really is.
Cheeseburgers are my thing. I love them.
I gotta be honest with you. Eating is a problem. In our lifestyle, it really is a problem, because you feel like you have two options: make a good meal and lose a bunch of time that you can't get back, or grab something quick so that you can do the things you're trying to do. And when you're a working age person, like, one of the most exciting things I think about being retired one day is going to be that I can make myself a meal without feeling badly about it.
Exactly.
The time I'm
spending. Yeah, my wife can tell when she gets home from work, because during the pandemic we started working from home, and she still had to go to the office. So I was watching, trying to do my job, make sure the kids are fed, and she could tell how stressful of a day it was by what I made. She goes, stressful day, huh? I go, yep.
It really is. Enjoy this fried egg, children.
Well, it tend to be because my therapy or my focus and meditation is just making a really robust meal. The mise en place of putting everything together is like my meditation. Mm-hmm. So if it's an extravagant meal, I probably had a stressful day. Because when she gets home, the meal looks great. The house is in complete disarray because I haven't paid zero attention to the children. And a lot of times if I'm having fun with the kids, she'll get home and goes, what's for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. Didn't think about it. I'm having fun.
I'm not upset right now, so I'm trying to enjoy my life.
Right.
It's a struggle, man. Like, I mean, it's not a real struggle, like you said, like storming a beach with a backpack on or something like that. But it's
for sure.
It really is. It's a difficult thing to balance. And you can see how people even get into those, like, well, we'll grab something, like we'll grab takeout. And then the next thing you know, you look up and it's 3 months later and you're like, I don't even know the last time we cooked something was.
Yeah.
Like how quickly.
Yeah. I think everyone goes through those like stretches. You're like, oh crap. It's usually when you go, how come we don't have as big of a savings account as we did like a month and a half ago? Then you go back and go, Arby's. That's why.
That's no kidding either, because that was one of the COVID lockdown things that I noticed. I was like, why do we have more money than we usually do?
Yeah.
And then we thought about we're not going out to buy food anywhere. Like, we're just cooking every meal here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We stopped eating out. It stopped paying for daycare for us. That was huge. That was like a $900 pay raise per month for us. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah. Should teach those kids how to take care of themselves. How old are they?
My oldest is 20. She's off in college doing her thing. Then I got a 12-year-old, a 6-year-old, almost 7, and then a 5-year-old.
Oh, yeah. There's 6 and 5s and all that. It's probably illegal to leave them by themselves, but you should check.
Well, that's why I have a 12-year-old. I'm like, hey, I'm going out. Make sure no one dies.
Yeah,
and that's usually what it is.
Check your local laws about how old your children have to be before you leave them in their house by yourself.
Right.
It's interesting.
Because we're going to test those limits.
It's very cultural too, like place to place when you talk to people about it. There are parts of the country where people are much more like, oh, they're old enough. I'm like, I don't know if 9's old enough. You're like, they're fine. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So
usually I think my benchmarks personally are, can they wipe their own butt and can they make themselves some toast? If they can do those two things and not burn the place down, I think they're cool.
I don't know. I want my kids to be able to defend the homestead. That's all. Under attack.
Okay.
I want somebody to fight back a little bit.
I mean, my dog will probably welcome them in and show them where all the good is.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that too. I'm afraid the kids would be like, just take whatever you want. It's fine. We didn't pay for it. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's the pandemic. Like, we stopped cleaning the house as often as we were because we're in it all the time. So it gets pretty messy pretty quick. And I looked at my wife. I'm like, I think we should leave it like this, because if someone breaks in, they're like, oh, someone already got here. We'll go to the next one.
There's nothing worth taking. I cleaned more during COVID. It was the extra time is what it was for me.
Yeah. Well, the first 6 months of COVID, my kids were with my in-laws. They kind of got trapped down there on spring break.
Okay.
My in-laws loved it. Me and my wife were like, we've never spent this much significant time without kids. This is weird. And we loved it.
My favorite part of it is very, very specific and odd, but that I hated that Arden didn't have to go to school anymore, but I love not having to get up to take her to school anymore.
Oh God. Yeah.
It's like an extra hour of sleep for me. And I'm a huge fan. Now, even today, she drives now. Like, by the time it was all over, she went back to school. She'll say stuff like, you guys were sound asleep when I left for school this morning. I'm like, yeah, that's right.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to sleep at 7:15, all you have to do is grow up. And that's it. Because I can start I start my job pretty easily here, and Kelly's been working at home. So it's, you just kind of get up and take a shower and get going. And
since COVID, no alarms in my house for me. I wake up at 7:00 every day, no alarm.
Huh.
Boom. Done.
There's some things that I've learned from it that were good, and there's some things I learned that as soon as it went back the other way, I was like, oh wow, we fell right back into this like trap. It was interesting to see how quickly lessons that I felt were learned were lost. Anyway,
quickly.
Yeah. So, Adam, is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should have that I missed?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first event that I did with Rucking post CGM and post pod. So that's going to be September 2020. I was in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and I did my first event with an insulin pump with a CGM. Went a whole lot smoother. And that's when I learned I need to get the loop, because there was another guy named AJ there who was also type 1, but he was wearing a tandem control IQ. So I'm looking at his graph going, yours is a flat line and you're doing more work than I am. And I'm going up and down quite a bit because I'm having, as many carbs as I can between movements to keep the sugar up. And I have my basal cut back to almost nothing. So like, I'm riding a little bit more of a roller coaster than he was. I'm like, I need that. So that's what I've been working on, trying to figure out is how to get the loop. Yeah. But I love Omnipod. So I'm just waiting for the Omnipod 5 at this point.
Right. No, that's interesting. Oh, also, why do I know, is that where one of the planes went down on 9/11?
Yeah. Flight 93.
That's why I know that word, Shanksville. Okay. Yeah. You said that. And I was like, why do I know the name of that town?
Yeah. I mean, GoRuck does these events that are kind of honorary, and 9/11 is a big one for them. They have these huge events in New York, big ones in Washington, D.C., but everyone tends to forget about Shanksville. So they've been putting these events on in Shanksville, and the community there loves it when we show up, because it's interesting going through the country. Walking down a country road, you see a stack of like 25 to 50 people carrying heavy stuff up a hill to the memorial, right? It's a big deal for their local community, is bringing awareness. And it's I swear to God, when my grandparents and our parents used to say, hey, I had to walk uphill both ways, they reference Shanksville because that's everywhere you go. It's uphill there, no matter what.
No kidding.
You can go back the same exact way and you're still going uphill.
How are we going back? And it still feels like we're going up.
Right.
Great.
So, but yeah, it's a fun event. It's a real ball buster of an event, but it's a fun event.
No kidding. How long do you think your body will hold up doing this? Like you said, you're 41, right?
Yeah. I mean, last year during the pandemic, I cut back after that event, mainly because, lockdowns got a little bit tighter here in Cleveland. And I did a lot more just walking around the block, but I didn't have a lot of events on the horizon because I wasn't going to go out in public with a bunch of strangers as easily as I was before, because I've got little kids. Because as this kind of like kids getting younger and younger, I worked in healthcare, so I see the patients that were calling me for oxygen getting younger and younger. I'm like, don't want to risk it. So I've kind of backed off a bit, and I'm starting to feel a little bit like my feet. I used to be able to walk 12 miles. My feet would be fine. Now I walk 3.5 miles and it felt like I walked 12. So I think it's just a matter of repetition, getting the reps back up. We'll probably get there, but it's really low impact as far as joints are concerned if you build into it.
Okay.
Lot less stressful on your knees than running, because
I imagine
running, it's no problem. You could do it with friends. So you could walk miles and miles with friends and not realize it. So which is what I like to do.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. The slow build part of it is attractive. That idea of not like jumping into something just crazy and maybe hurting yourself because you're not prepared for it.
Yeah. And what's crazy about when you're trying to do this stuff and you're a type 1 diabetic, when I goaded my friend Chris into doing this with me the first time, his mom called and goes, don't kill him, but you're going to kill yourself. You're diabetic. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not fragile. I mean, I'm like, let me do my thing,
right.
And now it's a big thing he and I share together. It's a lot of fun. We plan weekends around it. It's fun.
Did your wife ever get into it?
No, I mean, she does walking, but I tried to get her during the pandemic to put her ruck on and go. And she did it, thank her blessed heart, for 4 miles. And she got home, took it off. She goes, don't ever make me do that again. That is stupid.
It's not for me. Well, listen,
not for her.
I just realized that you flew from Ohio to Pennsylvania to go for a walk. So unless
I drove.
Did you drive? Okay.
Yeah. So I drove from Cleveland to Pittsburgh, picked up my friend that lives in Pittsburgh, and we drove out.
Okay. All right.
But there are people that fly all over the country for this stuff, and it's crazy.
That's it. No, it isn't. It really does sound interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, in the end, if you don't want to get into the lifestyle, like you could probably just do this with a weighted vest, right?
Yeah, you can do it with a weighted vest. I mean, CrossFit's kind of done that whole thing with the Murph and the weighted vests and the Hero WODs that they do. Mm-hmm. Same concept. Even the obstacle course racing circuit is kind of in that same vein. But what I like about rucking is that when you go to some of these events, it's literally unknown. You don't know what you're going to do and for how long. Yeah. That's a cool thing.
Cool. Well, listen, if you like it, I think it's good. And,
yeah, I mean, in that kind of like that functional fitness movement is still a thing. Like as a result of rucking, we went to the Kentucky State Fair. We had a mile back to the car, and the kids, the little ones, didn't want to walk. No one could carry them for that long. So I picked them both up and carried them the 1 mile to the car. And they both fell asleep. And it was like, had I not been rucking and doing all this other stuff, I would never have been able to do that.
Yeah.
That would have been more miserable. So it kind of gives you, what's that?
I think you would have had to drag them.
Well, we would have had to get all my wife's tchotchkes that she picks up from all that free stuff out of the wagon, put them in it.
How are we going to get the business cards home? The
Right.
I was thinking you would just strap something to their feet and just pull them through the lawn, but
there you go.
Probably be bad after a while too.
It's concrete eventually. That's never fun.
Do you ever think about the kids and diabetes?
Yeah. So actually this week we got our trial net kit for my oldest, not my oldest, my second daughter, oldest at home. And we're going to see what genetic markers she might have. Mm-hmm. Anytime they say that their legs hurt or they're really thirsty and they're peeing a lot, I'm paying closer attention now than I was before, but I'm not letting it rule. I don't see every symptom they have as they must be diabetic, I'm just kind of paying a closer attention to it though.
Is there any chance you got that trial nut kit at trialnet.org/juicebox?
That's exactly where I got it.
Thank you.
And when they asked me where I found out about it, I went click the down arrow and selected Juicebox Podcast.
I appreciate that. That's very nice.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, I don't know the link I clicked. It was in the show notes. So if you didn't put it in correctly, that's on you.
Oh. Listen, if I didn't put it in correctly, I deserve it. Don't worry. No, they're just it's an interesting situation there because I'm a big fan of what TrialNet does, but it doesn't cost anything for you to do TrialNet. So I think they're funded. I think they're government funded. And they wanted to get the word out more, but I'm like, they don't have a ton of money for advertising. So they tried it with me. And to be honest, by the time somebody hears this, they might not be advertisers anymore. I have no idea. But they did a limited run to see how it would work. And so now we're going to find out. So I appreciate you doing that very much.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, anything I can do to kind of bring that awareness up, even for my kids, like they'll hear my Dexcom go off. Oh, dad's going to explode again. That kind of thing. It's kind of a joke around here about, the stuff going off. And since I took your advice and lowered all my Dexcom alerts, they're hearing it more often. Which Dad, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. How did that work out for you? Like, what is your A1C now?
Well, that's the problem. I haven't gotten my A1C in the last 6 months. Last time I did it was 5.4. Yeah, wow. 5.4.
Well, what do the apps tell you? The
apps with Dexcom, because the last 90 days have been a struggle for me. Stress at work, that kind of stuff. My sugars were high, but somewhere around 6.7, I think.
Okay.
So a lot better than I was when I was first diagnosed, but 6.7 is the highest I've been since being diagnosed. So I have fell backwards, but going forward, I mean, lowering those Dexcom alerts, I'm not chasing those highs anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of preventing them with less insulin than I was before.
Good.
So, I mean, my carb ratio is 1-8. So if I have a pretty carb heavy meal, that's a lot of insulin to be pushing, which is weird. So
no, listen, Arden's is like 1 to 4.5. So,
oh geez.
Yeah. What's your basal? Yeah. Your basal must be 2.
No. Yeah. 2 to 2.5, depending on the time of day.
Right.
I crank it up at night because I tend to like shoot up at night.
Okay.
So I have it cranked to like 2.5 when I sleep. When I wake up, it's 2, something like that.
Interesting. Before I let you go, tell me something about when life stresses and things become, intensified. How does that impact you managing your blood sugar? Like, why did it translate to a higher A1C? I guess is my question. Well,
you stop paying attention to that kind of stuff. You think everything else that's going around you is more important than that at the moment. So in this case was working at a healthcare facility, well, not in this healthcare company that sells oxygen during a pandemic, and they're having sales problems, and you're a sales guy. You're like, how am I going to find a sale and that kind of thing? So you're stressed about that.
Right.
You're not paying attention. Because you're not paying attention, you go upstairs looking for a snack while you're on, doing something just to grab, and you happen to grab something that's probably not the healthiest to eat. It's probably pretty sugar heavy, and you bolus late, that kind of stuff. So now you're chasing. So when I beginning in November, a lot of people were getting fired from our company. I happened to be one of them. I just went back to the basics. I stopped, looked at the horizon, focused on that, and said, this is what I'm going to make sure I'm paying attention to, because obviously it's got a little out of whack. And every time you put up a new podcast, you're learning something new from somebody else about something will stick with you that they said, that I'm feeling that too, but they're overcoming it. So I don't feel alone so much. Mm-hmm. So it just gives you another way to focus on it. And just like, there was a girl from Switzerland. She was just saying she stopped weekly checking in that kind of was messing her up a bit. And that's probably exactly what was happening with me, because I wasn't checking in with any podcasts. Right. Mm-hmm. So, just kind of paying attention to the Facebook groups and stuff. And that's not everything. You got to have those constant education and reminders over and over again.
Laura from Switzerland. Yes.
Yeah. Her accent was awesome, by the way. Cool. I went to Switzerland, and I just literally felt like I was sitting in Zermatt with another Swiss guy listening to them talk. It was great.
Oh, excellent. So, okay. So I take your point then. There's something about an economy of time and having to stay focused on the things that are important, and it being easy for other life things to pull you away. And then you don't have that time. And then we're on that slippery slope of, we'll just grab something, and then 3 months later, we don't know what happened. Like that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
You debrief in quarters is what I always do. And I look back at all the variables with my health plan going, I really screwed that up, and I own it, and then I'm going to fix it. And the cool thing about rucking is it doesn't take much to get those numbers back down. Like if I do happen to be chasing one day, it's easy to throw a ruck on and go around the block to help that insulin take off faster before you hit high, before you go outside of your 180 range. And my wife called it rage rucking because like I'll eat dinner, I miss the bolus somehow. So now I'm like shooting up past 200, and she sees me just get up, throw some shoes on, throw a ruck on, and just rage out the door. I come back, she goes, "How you feel?" I'm like, "Back at 150, I'm cool."
Well, Adam, it took you the entire recording, but you did it. You named your episode.
What is it?
It's rage rucking.
Rage rucking.
I have to be honest with you. 30 seconds ago, I was like, I wonder what I'll call this. And I've been trying to do wordplay in my head like the whole time you were talking with replacing the F and the R, and I couldn't find it. And now all of a sudden, you were just like rage rocking. I was like, oh, there we go.
There it is.
Done.
Well, you could rage bolus and then rage ruck at the same time, because that's exactly what I've done in the past. So
somebody, was it you? On the Facebook page, I kind of had to remind everybody to be like human beings recently, around arguing about COVID vaccines. And I just basically, I ended up saying, look, if you're going to use the word COVID or COVID vaccine, and it's not to help somebody with their blood sugar, like we're done. Like I'm not doing this with you anymore. And somebody called my post a rage bolus or a rage post or something.
Probably so. Yeah.
And it just made me think of that just now, which I, by the way, was not enraged when I wrote it. I was just a lot more direct, and less polite.
I mean, right. And sometimes you need directness to snap people out of it, and it's, I happen to find those COVID posts are kind of comical in the comments. So I love it. Like anyone have in fact, I'm like, I'm going to get it now. I am not growing a tail, so I feel good about it, or I'm kind of mad I don't have a tail. It just depends on how I feel that day.
Listen, just from the perspective of someone running a Facebook group, there's 18,000 people in there, and I'm not going to allow the good work that the Facebook page does to be waylaid by 35 people who have a strong opinion about something. Like, I'm glad you have a strong opinion. Sure. Go tell someone else who cares. That's not what we're talking about here, So,
for sure.
Yeah.
And it's the same. There's other Facebook groups I'm part of, even the Rucking community. If you're a new guy and ask a question, I feel sorry for them because their posts are going to get hijacked and they're going to get made fun. It's just, I stay away from a lot of these Facebook groups anymore because it's just like, really, guys?
Dude, I have to say, my group runs incredibly smoothly. It's this one, the one thing that it just, I'm like, look, guys, like that's not what this space is for. Like, I'm excited for you that you have some very hard, held theories about things and you want to share them, but share them somewhere where someone's asking about it. Like, this is not, I think sometimes people don't understand the power of their social media and that they want to, I mean, listen, Adam, I have a fairly large following of people, whether it's social media or this podcast, and I don't have the amount of power to move people in a direction that you might imagine. So, you and your 400 Twitter followers are probably not the power block that you imagine you are. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it doesn't work that way. But
and people are drawn to that negativity sometimes too. When they post something negative about something, people are drawn to it. Yeah. And
I hear you.
It's just fire. Anyway, and it just blows up.
Apparently my rage post took care of it. So, all right, man, listen, perfect. I got to jump, but I appreciate you doing this very much.
Oh, no worries, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great day. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I'd also like to thank US Med and remind you to go to usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514 to get your free benefits check. And if you're in the Orlando area and you'd like to hear me speak at an upcoming event, you should check out touchedbytype1.org. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Don't forget to check out the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. And of course, if you're looking for the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes, they begin at episode 210 in your podcast player or are available at juiceboxpodcast.com and diabetesprotip.com. If you've already heard the Pro Tip series and are looking for more management content, well, guess what we have for you? There are currently 26 episodes in the After Dark series. Everything from an interview with a sex worker with type 1 to someone with bipolar and everything in between. After Dark Night Your Speed? How about an entire grouping of episodes all about algorithm pumping? 14 episodes about looping, Omnipod 5, Control IQ, and the MiniMed Medtronic 670G. There are also a ton of episodes where Jenny Smith and I have answered questions asked by listeners. Those episodes are called Ask Scott and Jenny, and there are 18 of them at this point. There are lists available at Facebook, right? You know the Facebook machine? Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. It's a private group. At the top of the page, you click on Featured, and in there are all of these lists, like the After Dark and the Ask Scott and Jenny stuff. In that same place, you'll find lists of the new and growing Bold Beginnings series. This series is where Jenny and I take feedback from the listeners. We ask them, what do you wish you knew at diagnosis? And Jenny and I have broken it up into a series, and it's going along very well. I think we're 5 or 6 episodes into it. Go find the Bold Beginnings series list in the Facebook group under the Featured tab. That's the private Facebook group. Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. Are you interested in celiac? There are 9 episodes just about celiac. Again, head over to Facebook, look in that Featured tab. When you get there, you'll also find 19 episodes grouped together called Talking with Children. These are interviews that I've done with kids, as you can tell by the title, Talking with Children. The Defining Diabetes series is 44 episodes long. This is a really great breakdown where Jenny Smith and I go through all of the terms that you use with diabetes and really explain them to you in an easy to understand, digestible way in short episodes. Defining Diabetes, 44 episodes long. Please listen. Everything from bolus, feet on the floor, rage bolus, bump and nudge, hydration, pump break, antibodies, things you need to understand if you're using insulin. There's a series all about thyroid, Defining Thyroid series. Again, Jenny Smith and I define the things you need to understand for living with thyroid disease. And there's a bonus episode with that with Dr. Addie Benito, where she thoroughly explains thyroid disease in episode 413. We also have 10 episodes grouped together about disordered eating. And there is a ton of information about how to bolus for fat and protein. And if that doesn't make sense to you, go find that list. Bolusing for fat and protein, 7 episodes that will change the way you think about using your insulin. And if you're looking for mental wellness episodes, currently there are 13 on the list, many with Erica Forsyth. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist who also has had type 1 diabetes for 3 decades. Erica and I frequently talk about things that fit right into her professional profile. It's a great grouping of episodes. So there's something for everybody. They're all right there in your podcast player, but if you can't find them, you go into Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook, go up to the Feature tab, and that's where all those lists exist. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.